Hello everybody and welcome back to the Prince of Persia 2008 Epilogue walkthrough. I'm not sure quite what happened there, but that was a rather funny little glitch, so I think we will go with it and it'll all be fine. So, before we use the plate that is kind of the Prince activated, we want to get a fresco. And to get this fresco, we need to get over here, grip fall down. It's very, very, very tight, but you should be able to make it. And then it's just a case of timing your running. And then we actually get to use the new plate. Because as with the sprint mechanic in battle, this is another new thing just for the epilogue.
Okay.
And it's pretty awesome. So I believe that this is called Energize. And essentially what the Energize plates do is they restore certain bits of the building for a short period of time, allowing you to platform across them. Now, in terms of what this actually achieves, it's not really a whole lot. It essentially just means that your path is not necessarily always immediately visible to you, and it may appear as you kind of platform along, which ends up being quite cool. But obviously, you know, if you
whatever we try, let's try it fast.
Like to see where you're going, it can be quite thrilling.
We have to keep going. You can't give up. Not now. It seems something's finally on our side.
Now I say that this room is probably one of the more difficult rooms in the entire epilogue. Largely because it goes so high up, and there's so many kind of plates and things to get through that it's not the easiest thing to get your way through. Also, there is a fresco that you can get to that's right at the top, but it's probably the least obvious fresco in terms of how you're meant to make it to it. Because, like, you can just about see where it is, but then it's not quite immediately clear how you're meant to get there. Don't worry, I will show you how to get there. Because I certainly didn't have to re-record the entire Epilogue DLC because I screwed up in getting this single fresco. Certainly not. Now, something that I will certainly say about the epilogue is I feel it is a little bit too combat heavy in terms of the amount of forced combat sections in this game are quite ridiculous. Because as soon as we get down to the bottom, we're going to have to face off against the shapeshifter, which is not the most fun of things. But before I go back into that, this is how you're meant to get to that fresco that you've probably seen just off to the top corner. It's quite a challenge, but if you at least know that it's there, you should be able to get there eventually. But yeah, with the combat, there's only 7 soldiers of Ahriman in total, I think. but they appear what feels far too frequently when they are appearing. But then also you have to fight the shapeshifter so many times, and the fight basically never changes, which can get tiresome after a while. It's like, in the normal game, it wasn't that frustrating, because all of the fights were kind of relatively well spaced out. Whereas here, even though they are reasonably spaced out, because you've only got a 2-hour experience, having that many fights just does get tiresome as you progress. Especially with the complete lack of variety in how the fights go down. It's like the least the shapeshifter could have done was go into the alchemist's form or the concubine's form. That would have, you know, shaken things up a little bit. So once again we have to knock the warrior into one of the pits before we can get him to change back into his hunter form, which is the point where we can actually kill him. It never changes at all. You just the location of the battle changes. So sometimes you might have, like here, 4 places that you can throw him off, and in others you're only going to have a single, or yeah, a single exit. It happens. Also, I have to say, I like that this came out back when Ubisoft weren't, so, how do I put this? Where they didn't like their DLC so much, because it was a very new thing. Because, like, having seen the amount of like pre-order DLC stuff that's available for Assassin's Creed Unity, it's just like, really, guys? It's going a little bit too far, don't you think? And while back hit with this game, Ubisoft weren't beneath kind of giving pre-order DLCs, it certainly feels a lot less egregious than what it appears to be now.
That's it! Take whatever form you want! You're still finished! Don't you see? If he's trying to stop us, he's scared of something. He's scared of you.
I can't stop him.
That's not what Ahriman thinks.
I haven't the power to stop him. Only Ormaz can do that.
He would have got free. You must see that.
So now you can kind of see that it really is the case that the Elika, I'm muddling them up now, but that makes sense because, well, it doesn't make sense, but their philosophies have become all muddled up, because Elika's really heavily gone into cynical, I have no idea what I'm doing mode, and the Prince has gone into
I didn't set him free.
ultra optimistic, we just need to get you out and we can do this. And I think I said it in the last part, but I do appreciate this kind of shift, because even though this DLC is ultimately going to provide an unsatisfying conclusion to the entire game, and I think most people would agree that it is unsatisfying. It is fitting, it's just that, you know, they needed to make a sequel where there was resolution, or just leave it as leave the game where it ended, because despite its kind of grimness, it was satisfying. Also, I seem to recall this being a particularly horrible platforming segment. It was just that kind of the leap to that final wall is just really, really difficult to get. You've got to be really precise on the platforming to get it. But I think we are relatively speedily heading towards a rather fun segment of the DLC. It's sort of a multiple pathway type deal, and it's quite cool. And I will say that kind of, despite what I'm saying about the fights being pretty samey, there's a great variety of different platforming challenges that you have to deal with. Because we've had the bathhouse, which was kind of a climbing to the top with doing cranks and power plates.
Maybe your powers will grow. Maybe Armin knows
And
that.
our next one is going to be very different as well.
The temple has gone.
Your powers aren't fading, though. You're growing stronger, gaining more power.
It doesn't matter. Whether they grow or fade, I can't fight a god. Not even the strongest Ura of old could fight Ahriman. And I haven't a fraction of their power.
Whatever you say, Armin is scared of you.
What if he is simply taking revenge? The Aura imprisoned him for 1,000 years. He isn't the type to forgive and forget.
Neither am I. He still owes me a donkey.
Soon he will take everything else that remains. He will swallow cities, devour the land. There is nothing that can stop him.
We should move on, before the corruption has time to build up.
So, yep, I went just a bit too soon there. That was very silly of me. All a case of timing with these corruption balls. I think they've got an actual name, but I've never learnt it. Probably should have done, you know, because I like to do that with my games. Like, I tried so hard with the Wonderful 101 when I did that. With the Dogus and Chudogus and Didogus. And I think there was Geddy Dogus. Yeah, and then I'm here and I'm just like, yep, corruption blobs. That'll do for these guys. And I believe we are pretty much at the platforming thing that I was talking about. Obviously we've got to get rid of this guy, but pushing him up against a wall, sorted.
We need to work together.
So, we have to get through a gate, which is kind of just there, and there are 3 rings which link to the 3 bars across the
When I
gate.
brought you in here, I thought this place was
Great. Nice little audio
We
glitch
should
there.
stay on the
Thank you.
path we are following.
I would have quite liked to have heard Nolan North speak that line, but evidently game you decided that was not a pleasant thing for me to hear. You just decided to just
well, if we have
cut
to start
out.
heading that way, then we either decide the mechanism
Bizarre.
to open that door is on the other side, and we're
The
trapped,
epilogue is
or we
probably,
figure
well,
out a way
it
over.
is buggier than the main game
That's
itself.
just the point where I was hoping for a suggestion.
There's a mechanism to the
Which
left of the door.
You
There,
can sort
2
of
more
see
higher
why
up.
it happened,
We should see what those
because
do.
Look for
the
handholds on
DLCs
columns.
generally have
Those
less
towers,
effort put
anything we
into
can
them.
use to climb across.
but it's still kind of just like, come on. You can just put at least a little bit more effort into this, just to make sure that it works perfectly fine, considering you're asking someone to pay an extra $10/pound/whatever it is, in addition to what they have already paid for your game. You can at least put the effort in to make sure that things like that don't happen. That would be great. But then, it happens. Even the most well-tested of games may have bugs that you just don't realise are there. I'd say kind of Nintendo are probably still one of the best companies out there for getting mostly bug-free games. Obviously, there are things that can happen. The Skyward Sword game-breaking glitch, for example, where if you did things in the wrong order, or at least in an order that wasn't expected, then you completely locked yourself out of something. I can't remember what it was, but there was that, and things like that happen. Also, looking at the corruption that is sitting on these towers, it's rather bemusing to see that the texture just kind of scrolls with the walls. So even though kind of the mass is writhing, it's not moving in the slightest. It's just the texture that moves.
One of the bars has moved.
Which, I mean, it could be seen as laziness, but then this is kind of 2008, and games have obviously progressed quite a lot since 2008, so you learn from these things, really.
Let's see what this does. Where does that get us?
Now, I do really like this room because you've got kind of just a single structure that you've got to maneuver your way around, but you kind of have to constantly change the way you are thinking about how to get around it to get to all three different rings. Obviously there is the thing of there is only one way for you to get to each of the rings, but kind of it's the whole having that structure and you having to kind of just think a little bit about what needs to be where in order for you to get across. I think it's quite a nice little puzzle. It's certainly better than the crank puzzle that we're going to come up against.
Up there on the back wall, if we can reach it.
Believe after the next shapeshifter fight, or around then, because even though it's a relatively simple puzzle, I think this one takes you kind of have to think a little bit more about these ones than the one that is going to come later. Because you have no idea exactly where each bit leads and what's going to move where, unless you think about it.
Let's go. Alika?
Now I have to say, kind of, I've not really spoken about the corrupted air too much other than kind of as a gameplay mechanic, but as a kind of visual thing.
That's it. We can go on. That should let
It's
us reach
very
the
obviously kind of like 2D sprites, kind of overlaid in the area, which it's surprisingly effective, and the whole clustering effect that it creates is just it really does make that whole overbearing like horror of air that you really do not want to be breathing. It just makes it really more real to you. Oh, and look, the Morning King is back.
But he's not going to get her.
It is you he seeks. State your wish.
I wish you and Ahriman would go swallow yourselves.
I don't think I wish you and Ahriman would go swallow yourselves is the best of insults that the prince could have, you know, come out with. But also, we have another fight with the Morning King, and as I was saying with the samey fight, obviously we fight him quite a lot throughout this entire thing. Thankfully he is pretty simple to defeat.
You would turn your back on fortune. You would serve a false god. You shall go no further. Your deeds are done.
Let's get out of here.
Why don't you take what he has to offer?
Is that what you think of me? That I could do that? Let's see if you were right about the path forward. You know, I could have taken the concubine's offers. Or the alchemist. I didn't come here wanting this. I know you've been through a lot. But this isn't a day I want to repeat either.
Now,
We must use the plates.
it's at this point
If there's
that
not a temple, how are the plates in here working?
Who knows what is here?
I'm not sure whether
There could be
I
a temple in a part of this place
quite
that we haven't
agree
seen.
with the characterization that's going
It's
on
you that's
here,
causing this, not a place. You have the power now.
because
You just don't want to
from
see
that
what's right in
cutscene,
front of
which you have to see,
you. Ready for some running?
it suggests that Elika's maybe coming back round to the prince. And while obviously I think a lot of people would like that, because I'm sure there are a number of people who would like Elika and the prince to
I
be
hope this
together,
takes us out of here.
but it's kind of just like that kind of just look and just pause goes against what they have
See? Your
done to
power is still
Elika
strong.
after being revived, and how things are going to go down later on. It's a bit odd, and I'm not quite sure why they decided to do it, because Elika is rightly furious at the prince for what he's done, and obviously it has come to a point where it's just like, okay, we've just got to escape now, but she's still furious at him, so why is she beginning to show some sort of interest again when she's kind of
Bargaining is a sign of
not
desperation.
going
These hills must lead us away
to
from
show
Ahriman's
much
power.
more?
He wants to reach
It's
us before
weird.
we can get away from him.
But I'm very glad we are back at the Breathful Mars stuff. This thing's just so fun to control. It's probably more boring to look at than it is to control, but it's fun when you're playing. Also, we're working our way up to another fight with the Shapeshifter. I told you he was going to be back soon. And, yeah. 2 Shapeshifter fights, a fight with the Morning King, and I can't remember whether it was 1 or 2 soldiers of Ahriman, in the space of 25 minutes. Yeah, this
You said
game
it yourself.
overdoes it
He's weak
slightly
right now.
on the
The further we
combat
get from him, the
side
weaker
of
his power
things.
will be,
Until he grows stronger.
which gives us time. You risked everything to save these lands. Don't you think you should finally see them?
Oh look. here's a room with one exit. Of course it's the shapeshifter back again for more destruction. And irritatingly, he decided that he was going to pull off the sprint so that, you know, I have further to push him back, because that's always fun.
Your turn.
Now, I'd say pretty much Elika is always a very, very, very safe option throughout this, because you can never deflect Elika, which is obviously very helpful. And when, you know, you can't use Elika, it just gets a bit frustrating. Now, if I recall correctly, I didn't have... Oh no, I might have had somewhat decent luck with getting him out, looking at the time frame. But I seem to recall having a fight with the shapeshifter that just lasted forever because I decided, nope, not gonna throw him off this time. I don't know why. But this time we did throw him off, so that's good and helpful. And in the next part, we are going to finish off the epilogue. We're nearly there. Let's do this.
Those are sort of mixed messages. I'm not the problem.